I say this with seriousness and respect, but your department is out of control. You are spending like you don't have a budget. You're on the verge of running out of money for the fiscal year. You are illegally refusing to spend funds that have been authorized by this Congress and appropriated by this committee. You are ignoring the immigration laws of this nation, implementing a brand new immigration system that you have invented that has little relation to the statutes that you are required, that you are commanded to follow, as spelled out in your oath of office. You are routinely violating the rights of immigrants who may not be citizens, but whether you like it or not, they have constitutional and statutory rights when they reside in the United States. Your agency acts as if laws don't matter, as if the election gave you some mandate to violate the Constitution and the laws passed by this Congress. It did not give you that mandate. You act as if your disagreement with the law, or even the public's disagreement with the law, is relevant and gives you the ability to create your own law. It does not give you that ability. Let's start with your spending.
Senator Chris Murphy delivered a forceful opening statement that put the spotlight on what he described as a department in chaos, overspending, ignoring the law, and stripping away protections for immigrants and citizens alike. In his remarks, Murphy accused the department of being out of control, citing illegal spending practices, unconstitutional impoundments, and violations of human rights. His message carried a sharp warning. Unchecked executive power threatens not just immigrant communities, but the very foundations of American democracy.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Secretary, thank you for being here. I'm sorry that I missed your call yesterday. I look forward to working closely with you. I say this with seriousness and respect, but your department is out of control. You are spending like you don't have a budget. You're on the verge of running out of money for the fiscal year. You are illegally refusing to spend funds that have been authorized by this Congress and appropriated by this committee. You are ignoring the immigration laws of this nation, implementing a brand new immigration system that you have invented that has little relation to the statutes that you are required, that you are commanded to follow, as spelled out in your oath of office. You are routinely violating the rights of immigrants who may not be citizens, but whether you like it or not, they have constitutional and statutory rights when they reside in the United States. Your agency acts as if laws don't matter, as if the election gave you some mandate to violate the Constitution and the laws passed by this Congress. It did not give you that mandate. You act as if your disagreement with the law, or even the public's disagreement with the law, is relevant and gives you the ability to create your own law. It does not give you that ability. Let's start with your spending. You are on track to trigger the Anti-Deficiency Act. That means you are going to spend more money than you have been allocated by Congress. This is a rare occurrence, and it is wildly illegal. Your agency will be broke by July, over 2 months before the end of the fiscal year. You may not think that Congress has provided enough money to ICE, but the Constitution and the federal law does not allow you to spend more money than you have been given or to invent money. And this obsession with spending at the border, as the chairwoman mentioned, has left the country unprotected elsewhere. The security threats to the United States are higher, not lower, than when before Trump came to office. To fund the border, you have illegally gutted spending for cybersecurity. As we speak, Russian and Chinese hackers are having a field day attacking our nation. You've withdrawn funds for disaster prevention. Storms are going to kill more people in this country because of your illegal withholding of these funds. Your myopia about the border, fueled by President Trump's prejudice against people who speak a different language, has shattered many of this country's most important defenses. Now let's talk about the impoundments. When Congress appropriates funds for a specific purpose, the administration has no discretion as to whether to spend or not spend that money unless you go through a very specific process with this committee. Let me give you two of many instances of this illegal impoundment. The first is the Shelter and Services Program. Senator Britt may want to zero that account out, but that account is funded, and it was funded in a bipartisan way. You don't like the program. Your policy is to treat migrants badly. I think that's abhorrent, but it doesn't matter that you don't like the program. You cannot cancel spending in this program, and you cannot use the funds as you have to fund other things like ICE. You have also canceled citizenship and integration grants, which help lawful permanent residents become citizens, helping them take the citizenship test. I know your goal is to try to make life as hard as possible for immigrants, but that goal is not broadly shared by the American public. That's why Congress, in a bipartisan way, for decades, has funded this program to help immigrants in this country become citizens. Now let's talk about why encounters at the southern border are down so much. This is clearly going to be your primary talking point today. You will tell us that it represents a success. But the primary reason why encounters are down is because you are brazenly violating the law every hour of every day. You are refusing to allow people showing up at the southern border to apply for asylum. I acknowledge that you don't believe that people should be able to apply for asylum, but you don't get to choose that. The White House doesn't get to choose that. The law requires you to process people who are showing up at the border and who claim asylum. Why? Because our asylum law is a bipartisan commitment, an effort to correct for our nation's unconscionable decision to deny entry to Jews to this country who were being hunted and killed by the Nazis. Our nation, Republicans and Democrats, wrote it into law that we would not repeat that horror ever again, and thus we would allow for people who were fleeing terror and torture to come here, arrive at the border, and make a case for asylum. Finally, let's talk about these disappearances. In an autocratic society, people who the regime does not like or people who are protesting the regime, they are just often picked up off the street, spirited away, sometimes to open-ended detention, sometimes they're never seen again. What you are doing, both the individuals who have legal rights to stay here, like Kilmar Abrego Garcia, or students who are just protesting Trump's policies, is immoral. And to follow the theme, it is illegal. You have no right to deport a student visa holder with no due process, simply because they have spoken in a way that offends the president. You can't remove migrants who a court has given humanitarian protection from removal. Now, reports suggest that you are planning to remove immigrants with no due process and send them to prisons in Libya. Libya is in the middle of a civil war. It is subject to a level 4 travel advisory, meaning we tell American citizens never to travel to Libya. We don't have an embassy there because it is not safe for our diplomats. Sending migrants with pending asylum claims into a war zone just because it's cruel is so deeply disturbing. Listen, I understand that my Republican colleagues on this committee don't view the policy the way that I do. My Republican colleagues don't share my level of concern for the way that this administration treats immigrants. That's fine. But what I don't understand is why we don't have consensus in the Senate and on this committee on the decision by this administration to impound the spending that we have decided together to allocate in defense of this nation. We as an appropriations committee, we work interminable hours to write and pass a budget. This budget is really hard to write and pass. And so we make ourselves irrelevant when we allow the administration to ignore what we have decided. And then when we look the other way, when the administration rounds up immigrants who are here illegally and have committed no offenses worthy of detainment, we also do potential irreversible damage to the Constitution. These should not be partisan concerns, destroying the power of Congress, eroding individuals' constitutional rights. This should matter to both parties. Madam Secretary, thank you for being here, and I look forward to your testimony.
Senator Murphy began with a pointed critique of fiscal mismanagement. He accused the department of spending recklessly without regard for its budget, warning that it was on the verge of violating the Anti-Deficiency Act, a rare but serious breach of federal law. According to Murphy, the department could run out of money by July, 2 months before the fiscal year's end. He stressed that Congress, not the executive branch, holds the constitutional power of the purse, and no agency has the right to spend beyond its appropriations or invent money to cover shortfalls. Murphy tied these financial practices directly to broader failures in governance. He charged that the department's fixation on the southern border had come at the expense of national cyber defenses, disaster preparations, and other critical programs. By siphoning funds from cybersecurity, he argued, the agency had made the nation more vulnerable to attacks from adversaries like Russia and China. By stripping money from disaster prevention, he warned, more American lives would be lost in storms and natural disasters. The senator then shifted to the issue of impoundments, accusing the department of illegally withholding funds appropriated by Congress. He offered specific examples: the Shelter and Services Program, which Congress had funded in a bipartisan manner, but which the department allegedly diverted toward immigration enforcement, and the Citizenship and Integration Program, long supported to help lawful residents become citizens, but now allegedly canceled because of political hostility toward immigrants. For Murphy, these actions represented not just policy disagreements, but clear violations of the law. Murphy's most searing criticism came on immigration and asylum. He argued that the administration was brazenly violating U.S. asylum law by refusing to process people arriving at the southern border. He reminded his colleagues that asylum protections were written into law as a moral response to America's failure to admit Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi persecution, a bipartisan commitment that should not be discarded at will. By denying asylum seekers even the chance to make their case, Murphy claimed, the department was trampling on decades of American law and moral responsibility. He also raised alarm over reports of immigrants disappearing, comparing the practice to tactics used in authoritarian regimes. According to Murphy, some immigrants with legal rights to stay in the U.S. had been deported or detained without due process, including students protesting administration policies. He cited the case of Kilmar Garcia and raised concerns about proposals to send migrants into war-torn Libya, a country so dangerous that the U.S. has no embassy there. Such actions, he argued, were not just unlawful, but deeply disturbing in their cruelty. Closing his remarks, Murphy emphasized that these issues should transcend party lines. He acknowledged that Republicans on the committee may not share his views on immigration policy, but insisted that all senators should unite against executive overreach, illegal spending, and the erosion of constitutional rights. Allowing the administration to ignore Congress's budgetary decisions, he warned, made lawmakers irrelevant and inflicted potential irreversible damage on the Constitution. Murphy's statement was not just a critique of policy, it was a constitutional warning. His message underscored that Congress cannot afford to look away when executive agencies ignore appropriations, violate laws, or erode individual rights. For Murphy, this is not a partisan issue, but a matter of preserving democratic accountability. His sharp words left the committee with a challenge: whether it would defend the rule of law or allow unchecked executive power to undermine the foundation of American governance.